To start, good evening. My name is Rajni. I'm a special educational needs teacher. I've worked for the area of SEN that I work in is PMLD, profound multiple learning difficulties. Um, I've been in the education industry sector for over 20 years, but moved away from mainstream because I had a great passion for SEN. And I'm a big advocate for young people with disabilities. Not all my students have an EHCP, but some of them do, and it is my duty, a legal duty, to implement that into my classroom. Thank you.
And hello, I'm Karen. So I am mum to two children. Actually, no, I say children. One of them's 18, so she's a grown up now. But my other child, Sam, is 15. He has a congenital heart defect. So although he doesn't have an EHCP, we have been through many iterations of healthcare plans in school, and also long-term hospital admissions as well. So I've had sort of the practical experience of going through this process. And I'm also a trustee for Children's Heart Federation. There we go. Go for it then, Rajni.
Okay, so we have Claire and Natalie. If you could maybe just tell me a little bit about, how old your children are, or, what brings you to this session. It'll give me a little bit of understanding on what the kind of support you're looking for. That'd be great. So maybe we start with Claire. Oh, you're okay. All right. Okay, you're typing it in. That's all right. I'll have a look at that in the chat. Uh, okay. So, Natalie, do you want to talk a little bit?
Hi, yeah, evening everyone. I'm here on behalf of my daughter who had a baby almost 2.5 years ago now, who was born with TOFs. So I'm grandmother. My daughter's a single mum and had to move home back with us with her little girl. She's had major, although the TOF has been sort of semi-repaired, she'll need a couple of more operations. She's just been constantly ill since birth with this year from November till April, she was constantly in hospital with, she had scarlet fever 3 times, hand, foot and mouth that she was in hospital, had caught another rare virus while she was in hospital, and she gets really, really poorly. She's having some she's had genetic testing done, but that's going to wait. They've said that will take 2 years for the results to come back. They do think she has some sort of syndrome. They tested for the obvious syndromes at birth for the Georges and Downs, which came back fine. Genetics have said she's got, some of the characteristics. She's got odd features like pointy ears, her fingers curl, her toes curl. She's highly clever. She had a SOG assessment done and she's 2.5 and came out at 4.5 with her SOG assessment, apart from her physical, which she was below 18 months for. She's very clumsy. She gets very tired very easily. So we just wanted a bit of advice what mainstream school would look like, really. She started nursery, has very rarely been at nursery because she gets so poorly once she's been around other children. And the Evelina's advice was keep her off nursery throughout the winter months, which wasn't helpful. We were like, she needs to be socially interacting. She needs to have these interactions. So we're just looking at I don't know much about EHCPs. I didn't know it's something that children with congenital heart defects potentially could have. I don't know. We're just trying to find out as much as we can before she starts school, really, about what we can put in place, if there is anything that we can put in place, because we know the school systems have things. There's so much on the school now. If there's anything that we could do to make her journey into school that little bit easier, really.
Well, the difference between an EHCP and a care plan is that a care plan is something that is internally done. So that will be something maybe the teacher and the Senko, or maybe the pathway lead or the year group leader will look at and discuss about how we as a school can support that child's additional needs, whatever those needs may look like. Maybe they're a physical need, or a cognitive need. But EHCP is a legal requirement which involves a lot of external people that have to give their view on why that child should have that level of funding to then be able to support that child. So maybe an educational psychologist will be involved, a speech and language therapist will be involved, the Senko will be involved, the teacher will be involved, the GP will be involved, the school nurse will be involved, and they will all give their view on why they feel that this child needs those areas of needs, and then the borough will look into whether that will be passed and the funding given for that child to then have all those external support factors come into play in the school environment. So that's the sort of two different areas. So a lot of children will have a care plan where it's like, internally it can be given without any other external bodies involved. But where you're saying that your child has a lot of physical needs, correct me if I'm wrong, and Karen, support me on this, because I'm not really fully aware of all the terminology. But is there physical needs that the child would have? So the child may need a physiotherapist to come in. Is that correct, Natalie?
Yeah, so she's under physio and occupational health at the moment. Also, speech and language have been involved because a valve had collapsed against her windpipe when she was, which is kind of rare, but does happen with this condition as well. So she's been under speech and language, although her language is fine. She doesn't eat. She's under the dietitian, which I think is another common thing with children with TOF. When I speak to other parents, they seem to say like food and things are quite common. She doesn't eat. She's on on milk supplements and things. Although she's not tube fed at the minute or peg fed, that might be the next stage as well.
It definitely looks, Natalie, that your little granddaughter, correct me, yeah, she definitely looks like she will be funded for that. She'll need a food plan, physiotherapy, speech and language. So she would definitely fall in that category. Now it's down to the Senko to first get that ball rolling. I mean, she's going into reception, did you say?
No, she'll be starting nursery in September. So
nursery.
Yeah, so we weren't sure as grandparent, as parent, whether you can start this process and writing an EHCP before they even start school from a parent point of view. That's a question that I wanted to ask, or does it have to come from the school? When I've been reading about it, and I don't know much, it does say that parents can write an EHCP, but I don't know anything. I just didn't know whether your expertise and people that have got children with the heart condition have ever had to write one before they've even started nursery from a parent point of view.
Is there a minimum age for an EHCP, Rajni? Because I'm thinking the thing is you've got two different needs here. So you've got their physical heart needs, but then the EHCP looks after their learning needs. So at this moment in time, are her learning needs above and beyond anyone else at nursery? But I fully appreciate you want to be prepared, ready to make that decision on mainstream school, don't you?
Yeah.
So I think, is it a case of you start your healthcare plan now?
Right. Yeah.
Because your EHCP, you're going to need external support in doing that. And I'm wondering whether someone like your health visitor would be.
Yeah, she's got healthcare plans that she goes to a private nursery at the moment, and not a school nursery. So they've been really good and put working with Ipswich Hospital. We come under Ipswich Hospital. They've been really good at putting a healthcare plan together for her. But yeah, just the next processes of going to school, really. So maybe it's working with the school. Are you saying that would help write the EHCP if she needed? Okay.
Yeah, because she would they would do a home visit. So the reception team, you know, would come and do a home visit, and that's when you talk to them and say to them, look, you know, these are our healthcare needs, these are our social needs, these are all the cognitive needs, and then you say, this is what we have put into place ourselves, this is what the hospital has put into place, and we still want it to be carried on through her educational years. And the EHCP is up to the age of, as long as that child is in some form of education, up to the age of 25. So, you know, it is a case of getting them on board, but they themselves will look at the child and know naturally that child will need all these additional support, and they would not, I'd be very, very surprised if they are not willing, or they feel that child does not need it, because all schools really do push for it. Because if you think about it, not only does it support the child as an individual, but it makes it easier for the school to then be able to support that child themselves. Otherwise, if they don't have that support from the external bodies, they're going to be struggling to help that child develop, grow, you know, meet those milestones and achievements. So it does work in their favor as well to push for it. Obviously, it falls down to the borough to then approve it, but if everybody's on board, you shouldn't have a problem. You shouldn't have a problem. Look, what you've just said, I'll be very, very surprised if the school doesn't get that, the SENCO doesn't get that ball or rolling straight away, on especially on that when they do the home visit. Do you know of do you know of a little bit about the nursery? Do they have they had you know, children that have had special needs? Is it a mainstream school? Is it a mainstream nursery that your granddaughter is going into, or is it what is the background of this nursery? Do you know anything a little bit about it?
So yeah, so basically at this moment in time, she's at a private nursery until she hits 3, and we are moving, and we are trying to fund her to go to a private school. We've got a meeting with them on the 27th of June to see whether they will accept her, because it's a private school. I don't know whether they have to accept children who are quite complex compared to a state school. I don't know that, you know. So yeah, we're having a meeting on the 27th of June, but also we've got a few other schools to go and visit and talk to them about. We haven't just solely picked one. We've picked one because we think the classrooms, the class sizes are going to be a lot smaller. Hopefully they'll cater to her needs a little bit better. So we're trying to compare the difference between a mainstream school where they've got 30 children plus additional children that may have EHCPs in those classes, from what I've read, and looking at a private school that might only just have 15 in a class. So we're trying to weigh up the pros and cons at the minute of where she goes, and just feeling what would best suit her as well, with what they talk to us and what they can offer us, sort of thing. I think we have to be sort of led by the schools as well, and where we feel that she will thrive. I know she'll thrive anywhere because every school's brilliant, you know, but what can best meet her needs, if that makes sense, you know. And like you say, whether the SENCO, whether they have experienced children with these complex needs before, I don't know until we get there and we talk to the schools about it. You know, I've read their policies and things, and they look all very good on paperwork, but it's not until you get in there and get the feel of what the actual setting looks like. You know, she's an outdoor girl, so she could do forest school all day every day, she'd love it, sort of thing, you know. because there's nothing to negotiate apart from uneven ground, and when she falls over she'll pick herself up again, you know. So yeah, it'll be interesting to find out and get the feelers for different schools. Really, it took us a long time to find a nursery that would accept her. She wasn't walking until she was 2, and when we went to go and view certain nurseries, they said we'll put her in the baby room, and my view was, she's not a baby, she's 2. Just because she can't walk yet doesn't mean that she should be put in a baby room. So it was finding a nursery that would accept her and look at her needs as a 2-year-old and not at her disability, that she wasn't quite moving yet. So that was really nice. It took us a long time to find a nursery that would do that, but we found it, and they've been brilliant with her, you know, with all her time off due to illness and things, and they're very quick to tell us if somebody's got an illness, because the likelihood would be that she'd pick it up really quickly as well. So, you know, her dietary needs they've been really good with, you know. Yeah, they've just been really on board with it. You know, I couldn't have asked for a better nursery, who have and a nicer Senko who's listened to everything and had the time to meet with us and given their little induction sessions and things, which they don't usually do with your typical, you know, developing age and stage developing child. So that's been really nice and really reassuring for my daughter, you know, who's shuffled a lot with health anxiety as well because of my granddaughter's condition. So, you know, that's been really beneficial. So but yeah, any views on schooling would be brilliant if anybody's been out there. I know Karen's got children, so that would be lovely to hear her experiences as well.
I mean, I'd be interested in the nursery have been able to support your granddaughter currently without some form of EHCP. So, you know, obviously as she develops, as she grows, her needs are going to change slightly, and you know, the she'll need maybe more physio, she'll maybe need more speech and language, she'll need other areas that would be sort of like focused on for her. But how have the nursery currently been able to support her? How have they done that? So do they have a speech and language therapist on board? What do they do to support her needs at this present moment?
So to support her needs, she hasn't been able to go full time. She is down to 3 hours a day with them because they can't. Because she doesn't eat, she won't sit and eat dinner with them, which is not a problem for us. We've said we're just more into her at this age being around children that she can play with and socially interact with and things like that. So we did try a full day. That was just horrendous for the nursery as well. I think it was far too complex for them. And they said, you know, would you mind reducing her hours to 3 hours a day before we hit dinner time, before we hit nap time, and things like that. And 3 hours just works perfectly for the nursery, and it's fine for us. What a full school day looks like, I have no idea, but we're happy that we have found a nursery that were willing to take her in the first place, you know, without.
And Natalie, it looks like she may also need like a one-to-one support, because going full time, I mean, I think they stagger it, don't they, you know, at such young age. They don't throw them straight into a full day. They sort of gradually put them into like slowly a couple of hours. It's many years ago since my children have been. My own class, I'm post 16, you see, my students are all post 16, so I haven't got any of the little ones, but I know that one of the biggest fundings is having a one-to-one. So the EHCP will, if that is written in the EHCP, that is what the school has to provide. So it's really, you push for the maximum, you know, you really get the current nursery to say that we were unable to meet that child's needs, because the child needed this, the child needed that, and we as a nursery was unable to provide it, hence we had to reduce the child's hours. So that will give an insight of actually the child needs quite complex, the child needs a lot of support. So that is one big area.
Yeah, and I know at the minute when they go out for walks, she's unable to walk with her classmates. She still has to go in a buggy. You know, she's so unstable on her feet that they've just given up basically of trying to make her walk to the woodland and that, or go to the shops. She's often put in the buggy and pushed, sort of thing. So but she's getting there, and our just biggest thing was for her to socially interact with other children, you know, and they are doing their best that they can to support this child in a little family run nursery, which we are grateful that they accepted all her needs, you know, so which is nice. But you know, the next chapter is moving on to big school, so we'll see.
And what is your sort of like biggest concern? What is your biggest worry? What is it that you're thinking this may not happen? What is it that worries you?
One for my daughter is being constantly, her education being very limited, being at school, in school, when she should be in school because she's constantly poorly. She's actually got a hospital appointment on Monday to work out why she gets so poorly. So I think that's my daughter's biggest fear. The other one is eating, because she doesn't eat. She has been tube fed in the past, but they're trying to keep her off that at the minute. Is how tired she gets. Just keeping up with her peers, I think, is another one. You know, she is non-stop, but because she's non-stop, she gets so out. She just like, come 6:30, she's like, I'm bed now. I need to go to bed. I need to go to bed. I've never known a child so excited to go to bed, you know, because she just has to go to bed because she's exhausted, you know. So I think for my daughter, the biggest fear is her being so poorly with illnesses, and that's not necessarily down to the heart condition. We want to know whether there's something more going on as well, you know, because, you know, we seem to be managing the heart condition okay, apart from when she gets poorly, and then unfortunately when she's poorly it does affect her heart. Her SATs and things are quite bad, so, and she's usually in hospital for long periods of time. So I think that's her biggest worry, but she has to be at school, and that could be at a special school, a private school, a mainstream school. She's going to be around children, there's going to be germs, you know, she's going to get poorly. But it's how on board and supportive the schools are when that does happen, really.
Yeah, I mean, you know, you kind of hit the nail on the head when you say that, you know, you can look at the policies, you can, you know, on paper it may look, you know, great, but it's only when it's kind of, yeah, you're in it, then you see, okay, is my child being supported? Is my child's needs being met? You know, are they doing the maximum they possibly can to give her an enrich, you know, experiences and equal to all our other peers? You know, it's only when you're in it that you actually think, oh, okay, yeah, the teacher goes above and beyond. The SENCO really does fight for her, you know, what she needs. You know, it's when you're in it, only then you can really say, yes, my child's needs is being met. But, you know, it's having those, it's getting people on board. And I think when they do the home visit, that is when you'll really be able to tell how on board the school is going to be. And it's about what you've said, everything you've said. I can't see why your granddaughter wouldn't get the EHCP. You know, she's very complex, and there's a lot that she needs, a lot of external bodies that she'll need to help her navigate through, you know, the school life. So I can't see why that would be a problem. It's always a parent's worry about, I mean, the school that I work in is a special school. I have worked in a mainstream school where there is a provision, and there are benefits to that in terms of if a child has a good level of cognitive understanding, you know, they experience the benefits of being with neurotypical and neurodiverse students. But if their complex needs are so great that it doesn't really matter, they cannot see the comparison, then maybe a special school is what is needed, because you know the needs are so great. So there is pros and cons to mainstream with a provision or just a special school. And I think you said that you don't mind where she, as long as her needs are met.
Yeah, that's right. As long as her needs are met and she thrives, you know, we're not, you know, and I think for her, I think it is about the class size. We, you know, as well, we do think there are traits of ASD and ADHD, but obviously, and the health visitor thinks that, and so do other healthcare professionals, but she's just too young to diagnose at this moment of time, and they've all said that to us. She's just, but again, they're not sure whether this is part of the syndrome that she's got, and there's going to be additional behaviours that come from this syndrome that she's got. And so, yeah, there's just more and more that keep unfolding with her, really. But cognitively, absolutely fine. There is nothing cognitively wrong at all. She is so articulate. You know, she's into absolutely everything, and that gives me peace of mind that I don't think a specialist provision or a unit might be for her unless she physically can't cope sitting in a classroom sort of thing, because she's so up down up down up down.
But then that's where the teacher will adapt. That's where the school adapts. You adapt to meet the child's needs. You know, when I was in mainstream with a child, because you know that shouldn't happen where it's a case of they're not understanding your child's needs. You know, if that is what regulates her, you work around the child. It's as simple as that. You know, I've been in classrooms where children have to get up, spin, and then sit back down. You carry on. You know, that's what they need, and I'm going to allow them to have that. You know, it does fall down to how passionate the teacher is, and you know, one hopes that they all, you know, go above and beyond for children with special needs, you know, or additional needs. So, you know, it is a case of where you just have to maybe wait and see. But when you get that home visit is when you say, okay, I want us all to be on board, and I want the EHCP. You demand it, rather than say, will she be entitled to it? Or you say, I want her to have EHCP. It's as simple as that. You're the parent, or you're the grandparent. You know what's best for that child. You clearly can see that she has, you know, she'll need a food plan. She'll need like an eating plan. You know, she'll need speech language. She'll maybe physio, all these other things. You know she'll need that. So that is when you say, okay, who's the one who's in charge of getting her the EHCP? And you get the nursery to maybe write a report, which I think they will get a report when she leaves of some kind. And if not, you can request it. You can say, you know, I really would like a report written to support her EHCP when she moves on.
Okay, perfect. Thank you so much. That's great.
That's okay. I'd be very, very surprised if she doesn't get it.
Okay, brilliant.
You know, so it's a case of you push for it.
Yeah.
You know, don't take no as an answer.
Okay.
So,
okay. Thank you so much. Yeah,
that's okay.
Thank you.
You're welcome. So Claire, let me just read it. Is genuine Claire for a few years, but I have informed them what to do in emergency instances. We will. I don't know what to mention. Right.
Do you want me to do this bit?
Yep.
Shall I go for it? Yeah. It's interesting, Claire, because I was in a very similar situation with my son. That his first few years at school were fine, and then he was diagnosed with epilepsy, and it was almost like the school were like, "Yeah, we know what to do with epilepsy," but they didn't know what to do with the heart condition, and it was only then all the care planning started. Um, the the beautiful thing is now all the forms, the templates are available online, and there's lots of guidance out there on how to fill in your health care plan. We've spoken to parents in the past who have kind of waited for school to contact them and initiate it, and our message is, you're in charge, you're in control, you can fill that form in and take it to the school. If you want to get your cardiac nurse to help you fill that out, again, absolutely perfect. The way I've always tackled it is, we have the care plan. I also give school copies of every clinic letter just so they've got the most up-to-date information as well. And I also give them the advice that if, the worst happens at school and they have to phone for an ambulance, I always say give the last clinic letter, because that will tell them everything they need to know in one piece of paper. I have always come from the approach, the more information you give school, the better, and don't be afraid to give them too much. And again, I've seen other parents who have got very much into quite a combative them and us relationship about the school are against us, and that's not been my experience. And I've always tried my hardest to be really open, good communication with school, and it's a partnership. Both of you want the best for your child, so I think that's the best route forward, really. There is a really good website that explains about long-term health conditions, and that your child has a right to education. So Natalie, your comments about will they accept her, she has a right to an education, and whether that is a case of, because she's got lots of hospital admissions, they have to look at another form of education, that is her right. They have to come up with a provision for her and help her to get an education, whatever that may look like. Schools cannot refuse people on the basis of continence, mobility, anything like that. There has to be provision for children. So, that is your legal right with her as well. But there's an organisation. I'll put the link in the chat for you. So Health Conditions in Schools. Oh, that's their website. It gives you example care plans, so you can take those documents. It gives you guidance on how to fill that in, people you could talk to get more information to fill in your care plan. The way we always used to work it with Samuel's school, at the end of August every year, his head teacher would email me a copy of the plan that they had on record. I would do an update. So for each year, he had a fresh, if nothing changed, that was absolutely fine. But for each year, he had a fresh care plan, and we knew it was current and up to date. And as his health changed, because he goes up and down, we would just adjust that care plan as we went, really. We went through a phase where everything was all about epilepsy. Thankfully, he's been seizure-free for 8 years now. So, we don't even think about epilepsy anymore with him. There's different issues that come to the surface, and then it gets quiet again. And school have always been really open to adjusting that as we need to go. Yeah. So Claire, you've had information from your cardiac nurse. Putting pressure on you to type now. Don't worry, I'll talk about yourself. My filling skills are not very good. Yes. So sports, if there's any limitation, so often I put things about there is no limitation. So schools get scared that they can't exercise or they can't exert themselves. If your child has no limitation, I put that in the care plan as well. The example I always give is Samuel's care plan said, if there is snow on the ground, do not make him go outside. If there are little things that are, have a really big impact on your child, then include it. And I always think it's those little day-to-day things that help the school to understand in practical terms, how do we manage this child? He can participate in sports, but in the hospital overnight with chest pain, teachers then they'll keep him inside during the practice. Again, I would get guidance. I would get guidance from your cardiac nurse on what he can do. And again, I would also be having a discussion with school about what is he doing whilst the rest of the class are outside. We had Samuel went through a phase where he couldn't do sports because he was just getting chest pain. And then his head of year phoned me to say she'd seen him just standing on the side of the pitch watching in the pouring rain. And this was November, and his head of year just went absolutely mad. He goes to a church school. They have a chapel at school, so it was arranged that when it was PE time, he could go and sit with the chaplain of the school. My cat has just arrived. Apologies for the tail across your screen. He would go and sit with the chaplain and have a cup of tea when his class were having PE. I was comfortable with that because he was getting pastoral care in the build-up to major surgery. So for me, that was a good, suitable alternative for him. But I think it's being comfortable with what he's doing whilst the rest of the school are getting that opportunity, really.
Can I just add to that, Karen? Just regarding the as much information you give the school, that is each time something changes, the school scans the letter and it is on the child's file or their kind of bundle, I suppose, or whatever, their section where the admin stuff keep all the information. So I would actually, if I was like Natalie, if I'm going to think about EHCP, I would actually have a little file and have all the areas of the child's needs in there. So if the hospital, the up-to-date hospital letters, so they can see, okay, at current, this is the child's needs from the physiotherapist, this is the child's needs from what the hospital is saying, and this is the child's current medication that their child takes, this is the current the other areas that your granddaughter is overseen by. Just have that ready so that you can say, look, this is her medical file, really, of all the areas that she needs a care plan for. So that's always good to have at hand, so you can say, boom, here you go, have a look, it's all there on paper. So that kind of helps in that area. And also Claire, just to say about the teacher, was it your son? Sorry, Claire, was it your son? Yes, staying inside. I get it, but I get it that, okay, he had chest pains and then they kept him in afterwards. But I really honestly believe that no child should be excluded in anything. You can always adapt every lesson, every experience, every activity so that it actually meets the child's needs. It shouldn't be as black as white as, the child, unless it's coming from the parent, unless the parent has actually said, you know what, I don't want my child to participate, I want my child to sit down, rest, whatever. But a teacher should, or a SENCO should not just make it as cold as, no, that child can't join in. I've got a child in my class with a, quite a severe heart condition. I know how long a period that child can walk for or join in with an activity before he needs a rest. So I just say, okay, child, you know, my child can do this, then I need to make sure that they have a rest. If I'm concerned, I'll call the nurse just to check him over. But other than that, I adapt it so that it's not too strenuous, not too, you know, vigorous for that child. But I don't exclude the child. I don't believe in that. I really believe in adaptation and meeting the child's needs, or, you know, to make them feel included. Otherwise, it can psychologically affect the child, you know, made to feel different. And correct me if I'm wrong, Karen, made to feel different, it can be quite damaging.
I know, and I, again, just to give practical examples of how it's worked for us, Samuel's now on warfarin, so he's at higher risk of bleeding. He's not allowed to do contact sport, but it's meant that his class have got rules in place to protect him. So if he's playing cricket at school, he's only allowed to play in certain positions where he's least likely to get hit by the ball. When they're playing dodgeball, the rule is no one is allowed to throw the ball at him. But it means that he's been able to join in, but they are just taking a few extra steps to keep him safe as he needs. And also, depending on what his clotting is at that time on his blood tests, school have also been really open to that, you know, there are some days where it's not safe for him to take part in PE because his clotting is too high. So yeah, I think, and I agree with you, Claire, that I think schools sometimes just, because they don't understand, and I think they're going to err towards caution, I think that's probably a good point where you could get your cardiac nurse involved. Another option is school nurses. They may be happy to get involved, or they may just default back to the cardiac nurses. So I know with our school nurses, if it was epilepsy related, they were more than happy to help. Anything cardiac, they just say, no, not us, it would be them. But in your area, it might be different. So yeah, that's another source of support that you could try and see if they're able to advise the school at all.
And Claire, I mean, has Oscar, correct me if has Oscar got a care plan in place? No, he hasn't. So I'm very surprised he hasn't, because with a condition, yeah, I'm very surprised with a condition like that, he should have had a care plan in place. Like, it safeguards the child, it safeguards the school. He should have had a care plan in place, so everybody who has contact with Oscar knows, if anything, you know, where he is health-wise, what to do in an emergency, what he can and cannot do, what is the medical can and can't do terminology, you know. So I'm really surprised. I mean, you're in your question, that Claire. Well, why does Oscar not have a care plan in place? You know, could you please, you know, explain that to me? After school. Okay. I you know, sometimes
I was going to say I'd be speaking to the Senko and saying, can I
yeah.
have a meeting with you, please? Yeah. So yeah, if you've got a Senko who's horrified, I'd use that person.
I mean, really, it's disappointing to say, but the teacher should have really said, I want that child's care plan. You know, that child should have a care plan in the teacher's hand. You know, when he, how old is Oscar? 5. Okay, so he should have had a care. You know, Karen, you know, I'm puzzled. You know, it just comes very natural to have a care plan. You know, EHCP, I get it. You know, that is a bit of a different league, but a school can do like that. There should be no problem at all. You know, it should it's well, the new Senko's in place now, and the Senko's was horrified. So hopefully all this is going to change now. And each you can request to have that care plan reviewed, maybe every 6 months, every year. When you feel that actually there's been a change in Oscar, that care plan changes too. Good. Absolutely. And if I was you as well, I would even be saying, should we not really even consider a EHCP for Oscar? I know you may not think he needs it, but it's always good to voice it. There's no harm. There's no actually harm to say, what's the worst that they're going to say? Or that it's going to be all reviewed and it's like, actually, Oscar doesn't qualify for EHCP. And that's fine. It's your right to actually say, well, let me see if you can get one. Why not? Because you think he's got slight autism, ASD. He needs to be assessed for that. I'm not quite sure what age that assessment is done. The Senko will be able. That is something you can push for as well with the Senko, the new Senko. I would like him to be assessed, but I don't think it's that. I think it's done a little when they're a little bit older. I'm not 100% sure on that, Claire. But that's something you need to be pushing for as well. I do know of some parents, not from my school, but just from my own like friends that have had their child assessed privately because the waiting list or the waiting is quite long. But I think that's just a personal thing. I don't know how it's done or how much it is or what happens. I'm not really sure. I'm not really looked into that on the private side of it, Claire, but I do know of some people that have done that. Maybe that's something you might want to look into just for your own knowledge, or just to see, what does that look like if I did go down that route. There's no harm in just doing a little bit of research on that. You could speak to your GP. You could ask to speak to the school if they have an educational psychologist. You could, you're in your rights to ask to speak to if the school have one, and they should have one, that you can ask to speak to have a meeting with the educational psychologist, with whoever you want to. You're the parent, they're working, the schools are working for you, that's what it's all about. We are working for you. We're here to support you. We're here to give your child an education and the best education possible. We're here to make sure they meet their personal learning goals and achieve to their best potential. So you do get some schools and some teachers where they think, oh, too much work, etc., but most should be supportive. I have heard of some that are a little bit, it's too much workload, but that's where the Senko comes into play, and the Senko is there is the umbrella to overlook all of this and take a lot of that paperwork away from the teacher and do all that, and really it's the teacher that then just executes the learning in the classroom. So as for having that assessment, maybe speak to them and say, I would like my child assessed, or can I speak to the education psychologist? Just really Push, it sounds harsh. To say push for it sounds quite a harsh word, like you're being pushy, but you're not. You're just being assertive. You're in your rights. You know, don't take a no. Just don't take a no for an answer, really. I mean, when parents come to me, um, you know, I do as much as I can to support them. And if I can't answer those questions, I direct them to people that can. If they say, "Oh, I would like to have a meeting with so and so," I say, "Yeah, no problem. I'll arrange that. I get that sorted. I speak to the, Senko, or I speak to the SL, the school leadership team, and I get that ball rolling for them." Um, so it is really worrying. I mean, you know, both your children are quite young, your granddaughter and Oscar are quite young, and it's good to get this foundation set. This is vital. This is the really important, crucial time, because once you get it set, it'll just be reviewed and it'll naturally take its natural course over the years, and it's easier. So if you can get this done now, and it will maybe entail a little bit more time from your part, as well as maybe time, like you said, the assessment, but get it done now. Don't wait, get it done. And if the schools, in the long run, it's beneficial for the school, it's beneficial for you. So, it will work in partnership. Um, it'd be really nice to hear the outcomes. Please, please let I'm intrigued. I want to know now. I want to speak on your behalf. Like, give me the school's name. Let me call the Senko. Let me speak to them. I'll say to them, "What are you doing? Come on. Natalie's granddaughter, Oscar, needs this. Get on with it." I would love to be an advocate for you. I really, really would love to, because I would not take a no. I'll be like, say that again. I'll really be like, don't even try it with me.
Start
But you're
quoting
not
Laura at
alone.
them.
Don't feel. And you know what's really good? If you can get yourself involved in like groups, like people who've got children or grandchildren with very similar conditions and needs. It's nice because you can share experiences, get support, find out how they did it. It's always good. I'm a big believer in a united front, if that makes sense. Is that okay? Has that helped, Claire? If you need any help, if you need anything, get in touch with Rebecca, and I'll do something. If you're struggling or they're not listening, get in touch with me and I will help you, happily help you.
Natalie, have you got any other questions? Anything else we can help with?
No, it's just been really great hearing from the professionals' point of view, from your point of views, of what you've experienced. And yeah, it's just been really, really helpful, really. Sorry, but my other daughter's now trying to call me. What does she want? Yeah, no, it's just really nice. And, hearing Claire, knowing that Harper's only 2.5 now, but hopefully, listening to Claire and not having that care plan in place, it just makes me feel like there's so much more that I feel that I know now that I need to push. I don't know. I don't want to be that pushy grandparent or with my daughter to be that pushy parent. So it's really nice to hear that actually what I'm thinking needs to happen, you've clarified it for me. So that's been really lovely. I don't want to see, you don't want to go into schools and you don't want to see like the drama parent who causes all the problems in school.
I don't
really quickly.
I don't think worry about being perceived as pushy. I kind of think if you're going with information, and I would pitch it as, I'm doing this to help you do your job.
Right. Okay, yes.
I've done the homework, so you don't necessarily have to. I'd
Yeah.
sort of pitch it in that way. I think schools will be grateful for that,
Okay.
really.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. No, that's
And
good.
also, I mean, a teacher that has a, you know, neurodiverse student in their class, they would want to know how to support that child. Naturally, it's a kind of natural thought process. How would I best support this child? What would I do if something happened? A teacher should naturally be thinking like that. And when their students go, sorry, I call them students because my students are a lot older, so I naturally say students rather than child. When my students go for lunch who have got an eating plan, I mean, you have that like just human level of care. You want to make sure they're eating. So you need to make sure they've got an eating plan, there to help them. I don't like the fact that if you are just being like more like that sympathetic, oh, and then that's it. I don't like that. That's not providing the best for your students. Sorry, you're not here. I say there's a difference between, you know, being sympathetic and actually supporting. There's a difference between just saying, oh, that's really okay, yeah, and then just that's it. That's it. Then it's ignored. It shouldn't be that. It'd be like, okay, tell me more. Okay, let's work in partnership. Let's see. Let's work together and do the best for this child. That's how it should just be. That shouldn't be anything different. I'm struggling to even understand that you're not even having that support. Like, I'm struggling. So just give me a call.
Yes, if either, I'll illustrate that. If either of you need any other help or anything completely different from this, you know where we are. We're always here to help you as well. If I'm going to pass over to Karen to explain what she's putting in the chat.
This book that I put in the chat is being released this week. Rajwan, our chief exec, has been involved in the writing of this book. It is designed for teachers and Senkos, so it might be one that you could recommend to the school and the nursery, because it goes through care plans, how they can support children, things that they should be doing. It might be something that interests you as well from a point of view of being prepared, but it is designed for schools primarily, to give them the support that they need. So that's another route that you could go to get more information as well, and provide more support to your schools to be helpful to them.